Hey, City Light family, I hope you're doing well today. Today is Thursday, and we're continuing onward with our morning devotions. I hope you enjoyed the last 3 days. We talked a lot about the characteristics of a renewed mind. So if you didn't get to watch those, I encourage you to go check them out. But today we are continuing onward with Exodus chapter 3. And something I wanted to highlight here that I think is going to be very relevant to a lot of people this year. And that's the idea that God has left us in slavery and God has left us in captivity. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but there's certainly times where I feel like God has abandoned me, where I feel like God has left me and he cannot hear me, he cannot see me, he cannot relate with me, and he's kind of left me out to dry. Not only that, but he left me in a really crappy place, in a really crappy season. I mean, if he could have left me on the island of Maui or something, we would have been a little bit more okay. I still would have been upset, but at least he left me at Maui. No, instead, now, not only does it feel like he's left me, but he's left me in slavery. And he's left me where I'm working 7 days a week, 12-hour days, being whipped by Egyptians. And I'm in intense labor, and this really, really is a burden, and it really sucks. That's where it seems to have left me, and doesn't matter how much I cry out, doesn't matter how much I pray, God does not seem to be around. And this is a very, very common and real reality for a lot of people. And I would like to point us to perhaps the most notable time in history when an entire people group felt this way, and that is when the Israelites were enslaved to Egypt. In Exodus chapter 3, we see that Moses has gone and met the Lord in the form of a burning bush. And in this burning bush, God's saying, I'm sending you back to Egypt, and I'm going to deliver my people. And we know the story well, where that Moses is kind of bartering with God. He's like, I don't want to go back there, and I have a speech impediment and all of these things. And in this story, God's kind of explaining to Moses why he's sending him back. And he's talking about how he's heard the prayers of the Israelites and these things. And here's a verse that I really want you to pay attention to. What I want you to do is go back and read Exodus 3 in its entirety and look at that conversation. But here's the verse that I want to point out, and I want you to pay close attention to. It's Exodus 3:16, and it says this: Go and assemble the elders of Israel, and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me and said, now listen here, this is where it's important. I have paid close attention to you and to what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised you that I will bring you up from the misery of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, so on and so forth, a land flowing with milk and honey. And I can't imagine in this moment that it was when the Israelites felt like perhaps God doesn't even exist, the God of their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They've heard all these amazing stories about God, just like maybe you and I have, who grew up in the church setting, and we hear all these great things about how God is so good, and God is a promise keeper, and God is all of this. You know, Abraham, he promised this covenant, and Isaac and Jacob, they have these stories, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves in what seems to be like Egypt's slave camp, and God is nowhere to be found. He's nowhere around, and all we have is the stories of our forefathers, but it's not really a reality for us. And it's in these moments where we begin to get upset at God. We begin to really get upset at the if God, you are real, then where the heck are you? And a part of us knows God's real, and that's why we're mad at him. If we didn't believe God was real, we wouldn't be mad at him. We would just sulk in our misfortune. But the reality is we know God's real, therefore we're mad at him because of our situation. Why aren't you getting me out of this? Why aren't you hearing me and delivering me? Why have you put me through this? Why have you left me in this? And I can't imagine that the Israelites felt much different. I imagine the Israelites in this moment during the season of slavery, 400 some odd years of slavery, that they are very much in that place of like, God who? The God of our forefathers? Yeah. Where's he been? I mean, by the time these elders are hearing this from Moses, all they know is slavery. I mean, they're 400 plus years into this thing. They don't have any clue who this God was that was the God of Joseph, the God of Abraham, all of these forefathers of theirs. They have no idea. And all they know is a God that is not present at all. And they've cried out and cried out for hundreds of years, and he's not there. But here's what God says: I have paid close attention. I have paid close attention. I have heard their cries. And not only that, but I'm now going to fulfill my promise. This whole time, all 400 years, God has been paying close attention. And I want to encourage you today that God will fulfill his promise in your life. And no matter what season you're finding yourself in, no matter what slave camp you seem to be in right now, God is paying close attention to you. Do not give up. Keep fighting the good fight. Do not lose faith. This life will have troubles. Jesus tells us this. This entire life that we live will have troubles. There's many verses in the New Testament where the authors are telling us, consider it great joy when you undergo persecution and these things, because it is actually the testing of your faith. And when you pass these tests, God is glorified and you are rewarded. And so it's in these seasons that when you're actually undergoing persecution, you actually have the opportunity to receive reward and blessing as you endure and as you keep faith and as you glorify Christ. And so let me encourage you. I know maybe in this season you don't feel like God's paying you close attention, but I promise you he's paying you close attention, and he's going to fulfill the promises that he's promised you personally and in his word. And so let that encourage you today. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep the faith, because God is for you, not against you, and he will reward you and he will bless you, and his name will receive glory for the persecution that you go through as you remain firm. He's with you, he's for you, and he's paying close attention to you. Be blessed.